Európska únia sa drží zásady, že znečisťovateľ ovzdušia platí.
The European Union adheres to the principle that the polluter pays, and this time, the European Union decided to go beyond large industrial conglomerates and said it would also target individuals. And so the system of these emission permits has shifted also to buildings, housing, and transportation. In practice, this means that when this system is implemented, people will pay more for gas, for fuels, and more when refueling cars. This will likely result in increased travel costs. It's simply a decision of the European Union. I haven't seen any headline from you anywhere like how all this originated, who voted where, when, how. So please announce, and that is why I am holding this press conference today, that as far as this system is concerned, this nonsensical permit system that will affect citizens was approved in 2022 to 2023 initially under Mr. Heger's government, and then it also encompassed Mr. Oder's government. So today, Liebling and the leader of progressive Slovakia, as the then prime minister, bears responsibility for Slovakia voting for the introduction of this ETS2 system, which will cause significant problems in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, we have not yet transposed this decision of the European Commission into our national law. We have taken the first steps, but we are intentionally delaying. I can say, though I'm not afraid of it, that there is already an infringement, meaning proceedings have been initiated against the Slovak Republic for not wanting to comply, but it is not our invention. 15 EU countries, including Slovakia, wrote a letter telling the European Commission, don't be crazy. Do you still feel that we are not transposing enough sorts of nonsense onto people? And do you know what the best part is? That when you heat with gas, you will pay more for that gas according to these emission allowances. Why did we undertake such a gasification of Slovakia? Slovakia is probably a country with the most extensive gasification probably in Europe. A really large number of municipalities and residents have access to gas to make it efficient so that people have comfortable heating. Do you know what the Commission says? That fine, gas will be more expensive, but you can heat with wood. We are going back to the 1930s and 1940s when our valleys and villages will be shrouded in smoke because wood is considered fine. We can heat with wood. If you heat with gas, you have to pay more for gas in terms of these emission allowances. Therefore, again, someone has to be responsible for this. And they will shout in the squares here about competitiveness, nonsense, harming, and harming. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sometimes surprised when I hear opposition representatives spout nonsense like whether we did or didn't do something. The result in the European Council would be exactly the same. So, Mr. Korkok, unlike the governments you sat in from 2020 to 2023, our government never voted. On the contrary, we voted against the decision to stop Russian gas flows for January 1st, 2028. Slovakia openly voted, and I say this to everyone, we will never support this mechanism. The only harm is that these decisions are made by a qualified majority, and you do not have the right to veto it. They know very well what they are doing. If there were a sanction, like let's sanction, then they would need the consent of all 27 member states. This way, they only need a qualified majority. There was a vote on Monday, and Slovakia clearly voted against it. We have a written commitment stating that the European Commission will primarily examine how to incorporate the so-called emergency brake into that piece of legislation. What if there's no gas? What if the price of gas skyrockets? That those countries will be definitively harmed. There must be some emergency brake that we have called for. Secondly, there's a commitment that the European Commission will address transportation tariffs, because one thing is to pay for the gas, another is the transportation tariff. And the other thing is to pay for gas that comes from somewhere in the West at 3 or 4 times higher fees. And we have more and more things, including the use of European funds for compensations related to high energy prices, and we're doing that as well. Again, everyone is lying. After all, we're using the money for energy assistance from European funds. Of course, from European funds. And where would we get 420 million euros? Therefore, I want to repeat again, and I will not justify myself in front of some Korkok, nor in front of some Eka, because if I were to, while in power, give Korkok a bouquet of red roses and send him to Moscow to congratulate them, he'd be knocking on the door for 4 days and sleeping in front of it.